Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest is John Tarnoff. Hi, John.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm so glad to have you as a guest on this podcast. We're going to have a great conversation. And honestly, it's going to be about a subject that I don't think in the 300 episodes that we recorded that we actually touched upon it. I mean, we touched on human resources and hiring, etc. But we're going to talk about hiring in the workforce from a different angle, like in terms of overcoming limiting beliefs about age of the employees that you are hiring. And I will explain in a second. I'm going to introduce you with your bio, and then I'll let you talk a little bit about what you do, and then we'll jump into it. Does that sound good?
That's great.
Okay. So, John, you've been fired 39% during your 35 years as a film producer. That's a lot of firing, right? You're a film producer, studio executive, and tech entrepreneur. And you learn how to turn setbacks into successes, which is pretty cool in a volatile business, right? So you reinvented your own career after 50. And since you left entertainment in 2010, you've built a global career coaching you have a coaching practice basically,
Yes.
and you develop it.
Yes.
And it's global. And you serve both individuals, one-on-one, and groups, which is amazing, right? And you're an executive and career transition coach, and you're a speaker and author, and you help mid-career professionals land better jobs and build more meaningful and sustainable careers. So, like the entrepreneurs that are listening to us right now, we go, okay, why is Adi interviewing John? I mean, obviously, it sounds very interesting, but we're entrepreneurs. So, there is something to be said about whether you work for yourself or you work for somebody else, that also you have to present yourself in such a way as the founder, sell yourself as the founder of the company.
That's right.
Right? Or present yourself. So it is definitely very, very applicable. But before we jump into our conversation here, what would you like to add? Anything? Tell us a little story about your entertaining days and working for the entertaining industry.
Oh, well, that's kind of like where do I begin? That's kind of a long and sordid story. But I think the takeaway from working in a volatile business like entertainment is that the way entertainment has always been is the way the rest of the economy has developed and emerged since the digital revolution, in the sense that entertainment was always a business of who you know. In my 35 years, I never got a job because I sent a resume to apply for a job that was listed. It was always through my network. And that's one of the things that I think is really important that people don't recognize, is that you really need to avoid the traditional hiring system if you want to get ahead, both as a hiring manager and as a candidate. You really want to focus on developing relationships. So from the candidate standpoint, it means that you want to build strong relationships with lots of different people who can bring opportunities to you. And then as a business owner, you want to develop a pipeline of relationships that will bring the talent to your awareness, because you may not be aware that there is someone out there who could solve a particular problem that you are encountering, or that you see that you will be encountering if you're being very future focused. So,
I'm fascinated by that, John.
Knowing the talent pool is really critical. And there's a lot that's been written about talent development, and there, I think, is a growing sense of consensus, perhaps, around the idea that the traditional methods of talent development are lacking. And they are lacking primarily because they really do not include a view of personal creativity and resourcefulness. So let me explain. If you are in a traditional hiring process, you are reviewing past performance and you are reviewing tangible skill sets, and you're trying to handicap that candidate against a set of applicants who are all within this kind of prior experience, set of skills, but their success in the role has to do with what we used to call soft skills, particularly as they get older. Kind of my cohort of mid-career 45 to 55-year-old professionals. You really want to put a pin in the traditional way of evaluating candidates, asking questions like, when was a time when you had a difficult problem and you solved it, right? I mean, people are prepared for this. There are all sorts of more innovative ways of trying to establish how resourceful a person is going to be under pressure, for example. One technique or one question which I heard recently was to ask the candidate, what are your open tabs in your browser?
That's an interesting one. I mean, I heard one that says, how do you drive? Because they're not, oh, what is the book? What book are you reading right now? What page of the book you are?
Exactly.
What you're reading.
Exactly.
So, John, let's just organize this, because I have so many questions. And
yes, absolutely. I don't want to go kind of too far.
Right.
Afield.
So here is a question that I have. Let's start with, you mentioned something very interesting, and I want to start with the beginning of the process, because we're all about processes, and I sense here a great process we're going to create together, and then we're going to give it to our listeners so they can follow it. So I like what you said in terms of not sticking to the traditional, if you call it traditional, way of seeking jobs, either by hiring or by being the candidate, right? Let's talk about that, because I know that is something that our listeners are definitely concerned with, is where do I find good talent?
Right.
And yes, and posting a job on a job board is the traditional way. Submitting your resume is a traditional way. It seems like you're breaking those ways, right? So let's talk about it from the perspective of the business owner. Right. What are some of the innovative ways that you feel a business owner should be engaged in order to find good talent?
All right, well, let me get into the system side of this, because I think the system side of this, from my perspective, applies both to the candidate and to the business owner.
Okay, let's do it.
Right, there are three elements to this system. The first element is know your superpower. Whether you are a candidate or a business owner, what is your identity, right? It's not about your brand, it's about your superpower. What are the particular set of attributes, skills, value, uniqueness that you provide through the work that you do? So from the candidate side, the candidate wants to be really clear about not just all the skills they have, but the solutions that they deliver. And it goes back to this question of this Japanese ikigai concept, the idea of your life's purpose. The four questions are: what do you love to do? What do you do well? What can you get paid for? And what does your world need? So those are questions that a business owner needs to answer, as well as a candidate. So it's really important that you sync those four questions between the business and the candidate. And I would say that if either the business or the candidate is not clear about those four questions, there's a mismatch. And if the business is really not clear about its mission, about its identity, about its value, about its product strategy, et cetera, it's not going to be able to attract talent that's going to move the needle and drive them forward. Very often, whether it is because the hiring manager whether the hiring manager or whomever is or the recruiter is not really clear about the company that they are working for or the job that they are there to fill, it becomes really hard to identify the right candidates, because without a clear sense of what that role is and what the company serves, you're not going to attract a candidate who is in sync with that mission. So rather than focus simply on the job description and really this narrow sense of, well, here's a kind of a puzzle piece that I need filled, you want to look at the whole puzzle and fill that piece based on someone who can be part of that whole puzzle and be part of the mission that you as the entrepreneur are advancing. And I'm assuming that if you're talking to entrepreneurs, you're talking to people who are very mission driven, right? Who are underdogs, who are trying to kind of break in and establish a standard or a product or a business in a certain way that's going to really disrupt the sector that they're in. You need an army, right? You need an army of people who believe in what you do. So it's really important that first element, that know your superpower element, be established, because without that, you're not going to be able to successfully penetrate the pool of talent that you want. And conversely, a candidate is not going to be able to draw opportunities to them that are in line with their superpower unless they establish that. So those are two interlocking principles.
Good. And now, is there a third one?
There is a third one. And the third one goes to branding. And this is, I think, important on both sides of the equation. And the idea that it's really important now to be a thought leader, that your reputation is not, kind of based on what your skills are, what you do, what your prior background is. It's about what your future vision is going forward. And you want to, as a business owner, not just be successful in selling your product or service. You want to be a leader in your business about bringing everyone together around the issues that are going to impact the future of your sector. Because if you think about it, collaboration today is the best competition. If you are trying to play a zero-sum game where your competitive edge is putting everyone else out of business, well, then you're kind of reducing the size of your sector, right? Why would you shrink the marketplace overall instead of expanding the marketplace? So you want to be a collaborative competitor to grow the market and give the market many opportunities to engage with your product, your service, and the products and services of your competitors, because that establishes the value in the marketplace of what you all do. So that also goes to your talent pool. If you're competing through collaboration, then you're not looking at shutting people down for going off and working for competitors. The whole debate that's going on over the non-compete clauses. You want to bring as many talented people into the industry as possible, because there's enough to go around. And just because someone doesn't work out for you because they're the wrong fit or whatever, they could be a fit for your competitor. You might be best served by outplacing a talented employee who's not working for you and giving them to a competitor, because you never know where that favor might get returned.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've done it. And I think it's a really good point, because, sometimes even an employee that did not work for me for some reason, but they were good and had good skill set, they might work for somebody else. And that collaboration definitely can go a long way. So I agree with you 100%. That's a very good point. So John,
So,
yeah.
yeah. So I just want to say about thought leadership. So as a business owner, you want to be engaged, not just in your own business internally, you want to be engaged externally with industry associations, with the opportunities to speak, to come on podcasts like yours, to really establish your credibility as a leader so that you can draw the talent to you because you're smart, because you're insightful, because you have a particular angle on the business and the future. And in order to attract talent, you need to make that known. You need to stand up for what you stand for as a business owner and attract people to those conversations.
I agree. I completely agree. Okay, so now you work with professionals, mid-career professionals, right?
Right.
And what are some of the limiting beliefs that you find out there in terms of hiring mid-career professionals?
I think adaptability is key. And one of the things from a candidate side that I think is really crucial is for the candidate to disengage from the identity that they had working for their previous company. Whether it was the role, the leadership, the business, the colleagues, in order to make the pivot, you really have to pull away from where you did the work to what the work is and what the value is. So I would say for a hiring manager, for an entrepreneur, it's really important to kind of try to get inside that person and kind of peel away the layers of their prior job and really find the essence of who that person is and whether or not they can provide that essence for you. So I think to focus on the prior job and to kind of ask them if they were laid off, for example. So tell me about how, the last job ended. Well, there's going to be a lot of awkwardness and discomfort around that. I would put that on hold and not make that an important criterion for you in terms of, oh, well, they got laid off in that last job. There must have been something wrong with them. Well, you don't know that. They might have gotten bored. They might have gotten frustrated. They might have had a toxic work environment. Their manager might have gotten changed. There was, all sorts of reasons why they got laid off, why it didn't work out. You'd be better served to really figure out who that person is, absent all of those other considerations, because you might be surprised that this is a diamond in the rough, someone who has been unappreciated for their entire career, and you've now discovered what their value truly is and how they can apply it for you.
That's a very good point. You can't really judge. You have to look at what you have in front of you. And as you said, hire for the future and not necessarily compare to the past. Although you do want to have experience, you do want to see that they actually able to produce. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Too often I think people are lazy about this and they're afraid. They're afraid to make mistakes. They're afraid to take chances. That's why people mostly want to hire someone who already has a job. They don't want to hire someone who is currently unemployed and looking for a job, because that brings up all sorts of fears and questions about, well, why are they no longer working there and what happened? And I don't want to get into that. Well, that's life, right? We're no longer in a steady state career world where you get your education and then you work in a company for 20, 30 years, right? That doesn't happen anymore. And so you need to work harder as a hiring manager and really dig deeper when you're hiring for talent, because chances are you're not going to have them that long. Average tenure at a job these days is 4 to 5 years across all generations. It's less for Gen Z, it's more for Gen X and Boomers, but basically there are no more 10-year, 20-year jobs, right? Whether it's your business that's going to change or their mindset that's going to change, aim for the 3 to 5 year of maximum value and figure out whether this person that you're considering could be that person to get you through this next period of growth and development, or pivot, whatever that might be that you're facing as a business owner.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, you mentioned about the entrepreneur themselves, although they're not employed by themselves, right? That, you have to develop that identity as a founder, right? And that way of presenting themselves so they are still employable, even if by themselves, right?
Well, sure, but I think that the point there about applying the superpower principle to yourself as a founder is that you are more than your product. And if you ask any VC who's worth their half, who's worth the value that they've raised or they've their exits, they're going to say that the identity of the founder is really key, and that they will invest in a founder more than they will invest in, or as much as they will invest in the business plan, because the founder not only has to execute, the founder has to have the vision. So it really is important to not hide behind your business plan and throw all of your energy into that plan. You have to have that superpower as well, not just because you're going to do other things in your career, but because when the proverbial shit hits the fan in your new venture, you need to have the resilience, resourcefulness, the grit to sustain the business through it and to see it through. And you don't want to cave or you don't want to fold under pressure. At the same time, you don't want to have founderitis, right? You don't want to be so attached to that business that you can't see the opportunity for someone else to come in to provide stronger direction, more effective direction for the stage that business is in. So your ability to cultivate all of those kind of Renaissance person aspects to your character are really important criteria that an investor is going to look for. It's the whole person approach. So again, don't hide behind that business plan. Be equally worthy of that faith that your investor is putting in your business. Also, you want them to put that faith in you.
Absolutely. That reminds me of an episode that I did with Marina Verjakova, and she has a podcast, Voice of a Leader, and she's the owner of Brand of a Leader. And we talked about personal branding, and that's a great episode, and I'm going to put it in the show notes, because develop your own branding, your own personal branding is very important. And many leaders are not aware of that, or they forget about it, or they don't do it. And I think it's very important, just like to your point of what you just said. Absolutely.
It's one of the things that's going to follow you throughout your career. You're likely not going to be doing this company forever, but if you have a consistent character set that you can establish in terms of the values, the criteria that you use in business, the way in which you lead people, the skills that you have, the philosophy of business that you adhere to, all of that is going to follow you into the next business that you run.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. Well, John, you're definitely a wealth of information. You know what you're talking about. If people want to hear more about you or read your books or talk to you, how can they get a hold of you?
So the best way to reach me is through LinkedIn. I think I'm the only John Tarnoff on LinkedIn, so just search for me there. You can also learn more about me on my website, which is johntarnoff.com. And I'm very accessible. And if anyone has any questions or would like to engage further in this question, these issues, please feel free, contact me.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast. It was a great conversation. So thank you so much. And we'll see you next time. Yeah, you're very welcome.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.